Pleasant good night to all. Honorable Prime Minister, Party President, Ministers of Government, General Secretary, a pleasant good night to all Gala. I believe I would have done myself a disservice by being late tonight, by having to speak after the Honorable Prime Minister. And so I was very happy that I took the time to jot a few notes down, because I don't think I could have done much justice having to speak off the cuff in the way that the Prime Minister does. So I was glad that, having been called last night to say a few words on behalf of the new inductees, including myself, that I took the time this morning to jot a few things down. I also want to apologize for being late. Wednesdays is a particularly difficult time for me, because I have to deal with my daughter on Wednesdays. And although, there are other people who can take her around to lessons and stuff, she insists I have far to take her to lessons. And I indulge her by being a good parent. And recently I said to her, I wonder when you're going to become an independent child and do things on your own. And she rebutted with a smart sound. Daddy, I'm glad that you have a daughter that sticks close to you. So I couldn't, I had no answer to that. But I'm glad to be here, and it's really a deep honor for me to be chosen tonight to speak on behalf of the new inductees into the Democratic Party. And recently in re-examining my own life, and in a recent interview I did for Monday, I got the opportunity to reflect on my 52 years, and actually I was 52 yesterday. And on reflection, I considered myself to be one of those lucky ones who was there before independence, and therefore had the experience of living through the last 50 years that we now celebrate. Some may argue that a mere 3 years, because when Barbados became independent, it was actually 3, because it never falls in it. So some may argue that a mere 3 years is not enough to have impacted on our journey to independence. But it is not the journey to independence, but rather the journey after independence on which I reflect. And the question of what Right Excellent Earl Walton Barrow intended for all Barbadians in this post-independence era. So I was glad when I walked in tonight that the Prime Minister was enunciating on the issue of wealth and distribution of wealth and distribution of power, and reflecting on the ideology on which Earl Walton Barrow had. And the memory which I reflected on took me back to growing up in a household where the daily struggle was the order of the day, and where the conditions were created where a single parent who supported her family with too much effort on the part of the father was still sent to school with 4 children and put food on the table. Now this condition didn't just happen by chance. It was created out of an ideology that Barrow saw for all Barbadians, which was the ability for all Barbadians to be able to provide for their families regardless of social status, class, or creed. and to do so without having to break the law or to be living themselves. He sought to create conditions for a living which inspired pride and dignity. A pride which was real and not false, and a dignity that meant something to all Barbadians. This is the ideology which has brought me to your doorstep, and with which I can readily identify, having spent my entire life working towards the same idea and ideology. Now again, some may say that all this talk about Barrow and his ideologies in the past. And I will counter by saying that a strong foundation can never be shaken, even if the roof blows off. All the houses have remained as a strong foundation. So sometimes we have earthquakes earth breaks and all these things. And then as builders, one of the things we have to pay interest in is we have a very strong foundation. And once you have that, it's very hard to shake it. Now, Aristotle, and it was good. Recently, I just came back from Panama again yesterday. And I took some time reading a little bit about Aristotle. And it's so ironic that having been asked yesterday to speak to this issue, that, you know, I was reflecting on my readings only the last 2 days. And Aristotle wrote on speaking to the issue of politics, that the state is possible only because men have common aspirations. But government and political power, the existence of officials who are given authority to act in the name of the whole state, are necessary because man's community is imperfect, and because man's social nature expresses itself in conflicting ways, in the clash of interests, the rivalry of parties, and the struggle of classes, instead of in united seeking after common good. Barrow understood this common good, which we must and we will seek after, to build hope in the imperfect community in which we live. This is what Barrow saw when he encouraged us to look in the mirror, not to reflect on ourselves, but rather to shake off the selfish masks which we often exhibit, and to become selfless in our mission to provide for all Barbadians. This is who we must see when we look into the mirror. As new members, we must and we will build participation by instilling hope in every household to do better and for a better future, where social vigilance stands equal to economic development. The late Prime Minister David Thompson, and I believe he too was reflected on Barrow's ideology, and he insisted that we cannot build a society without an economy. So by all means, let us put people first. Let us put families first. Not in a way that tensions exist between the two, but in a way that our economic policies sync with our social policies. In policy development, we call this policy coherence. I came into this life knowing that I wanted to serve humanity better. This is what Gala stood for, and this is what brought me here tonight. The legacy on which this party was founded lives on in the hearts and the minds of men willing to serve their nation, to make it a better for all Barbadians. I recently attended a branch meeting in St. Michael's office, and Andewika was making a point about growing up as well and struggling with her mother and family struggling. And she made the point that she too was able to earn an education basically because of what Elmar did and what he put in place, because of his ideology. And ideology in itself denotes the belief system, and it is action-oriented. Now, Mark Haberpian, in his regimes, moments, and ideologies, he characterizes it as a programmatic and rhetorical application of some grandiose philosophical system, which arose men to political action and may provide strategic guidance for that action. We, the new inductees, are men and women arisen to political action, to hold and to action the ideology on which Barrow built his party, and to do so with commitment and fortitude. In closing, recently I scripted and directed a production for Pinelands called Your Image. And obviously I would have had to do a lot of in-depth research to be able to create the body of it. And at the end of the production, I sought to mirror in a small way, I could never mirror Barrow's mental ability. But I sought to mirror and to adapt, or what I saw was my own mirror image, how I would like to see in terms of going forward for Barbados. But I adapted it in a little way for this event tonight, and I asked you to indulge me, and particularly for the new inductees to reflect on this poetic writing. But it is something that all of us can reflect on. So although it's poetic, I hope that we get the essence of it in my closing. And I asked the question, what kind of mirror image do you now have of yourself? This is the big question. Are you still prepared to wallow in the image of the old colonial mass, despising yourself, hating your brother, hating your sister? Or are we ready and willing to accept who we are and where we came from? A foundation built by the skipper to persevere for all our days, to inspire, to like myself, to like my brother, to see myself, to see my sister. So come, dance this dance, and sing true songs of independence. Come, sail away on the ship built by the skipper to reclaim themselves. Get on board the DLP ship, leaving no one behind. Full respect to the skipper. I thank you for accepting us in your home, on this ship, on this journey.